Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. Today, Mock Draft Monday, we're taking a look at a 2023 early NFL mock draft by Josh Edwards of CBS Sports. Again, just trying to look at some prospects, bringing some prospects to light. We did a lot of summer scouting this weekend, so we got a lot of good film on these players. Before we jump into the draft, I just wanted to say thank you guys for all the support that you guys have shown the channel. Whether you're watching for the NFL draft, whether you're watching for college football, the discourse, the comments have been absolutely awesome. And my brother and I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel the way you do. So if you guys do like the content, I encourage you guys to subscribe to the channel. Now, let's start talking some ball. Still, CJ Stroud, the number one quarterback off the board here. It's going to be between him and Bryce Young. You know what the rhetoric is going to be around the league is Bryce Young is too short. If you were asking me to draft a quarterback today based on the play you saw from last year between CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, it would be Bryce Young. Does CJ Stroud have probably the better projectable traits to the NFL? Absolutely. But Bryce Young, the arm talent, the ability to throw off platform, the ability to be mobile and get outside the pocket, he checks all the boxes, really, besides the one on the scale and on the measuring tape. And so, what is your kind of feel on these two top quarterbacks here?
Yeah, I think the talent is like awfully close. And again, I think that it's going to be the same classic.
Yep.
Do you want to take a risk on a quarterback under 6 feet tall or whatever other narratives the draft community likes to throw out there?
They'll
But
throw them up there.
I think that the key difference to me right now, because they both obviously put up monster numbers and look like they're out of place good in college football and at big schools. But Bryce Young, I think the difference is he elevates his game in the big moments. When they played Georgia each time, he looked really good. He was certainly not the reason the national title game didn't go the way Alabama would have wanted. So I think just comparing those two, CJ Stroud's level does take a bit of a dip against Oregon, against Michigan. Those were probably his two worst games, and those were the two games they needed him to be all-star good. And I think the level just didn't quite rise to the occasion. So that's maybe the one key differentiator for me because I think the talent's wildly close.
Very, very close. I honestly like CJ Stroud, the projection more. I don't know if I'd take him over Bryce Young right now, but you saw him get better and better as the year went on. That first start against Minnesota was rocky. And I was on Twitter kind of like defending him. I didn't think he looked as bad as kind of people thought, but he clearly got better as the season went on. The one big question mark about both these prospects is how do they look? And Bryce Young will have a chance to prove this a little bit more this year. How do they look when they don't have elite wide receiver talent around them? That's been kind of the knock on quarterback prospects from both these schools in the past, especially like a guy like Justin Fields. When you're throwing to Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, or when Mac Jones was throwing to Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, like it's easy to look really good. And so I know that'll, I think, be another knock on these top two quarterbacks. But I think unquestionably, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young are the two top quarterbacks in this class. Next pick, we got Will Anderson. Don't really need to talk much about him. He's been the best non-quarterback in this class.
He's the best player in the draft, I would have to say. I mean, just in terms of how dominant he is. Like, if you look at the stats, they look like video game numbers, like 17 sacks, 30-plus TFLs. Like, they're insane numbers.
Yeah, he's going to be the first defense. He's going to be the first non-quarterback player taken. We'll see where they want to slot him in there.
I mean, he could be number one for sure, depending on who's picking
who
first.
Exactly. He's great. Will Levis coming in at 3. This one hurts me really bad. You guys who are friends of the channel know the Lions are kind of like my baby. I've been loving talking about rebuilding their franchise. I love Matt Campbell. I love where they're going as a franchise. And if they have a top 3 pick and they take Will Levis over Bryce Young, I'm going to absolutely lose my mind. That's not saying
that'd be such a bad pick.
It'd be such a right now. I mean, that's not saying Will Levis can certainly show. I mean, he's got crazy traits. I mean, he looks like a tight end. He moves extremely well. He's a rocket. He has a rocket arm, but you don't see any sort of progression. He's not really asked to do much in terms of anticipating throws. He's more of a see it, throw it guy, and he has the arm talent to do that. But that does not project well to the next level. And right now, if you're saying you're going to pick Will Levis over Bryce Young, you're out of your dang mind.
And he's been leading a very weak offense at Kentucky, and it wasn't good this year.
And they don't even
You got to see such a monster step this year
they
to
don't even
even
ask him to
consider
do
him in the
much.
first round.
I mean,
Yeah,
he's heavily relying on play action, like they run the ball, and then they'll go play action. And then when they're
I would
doing
be able to accept that if they won more games than they do, but like that just kind of tells me Kentucky isn't comfortable with asking him to do a ton because it's not like they were winning an SEC title with like how Michigan did it. Like Michigan didn't ask Cade McNamara to do anything, but we also
yes.
won a zillion games. So I don't take that as like a defense of Will Levis. I don't think right now that they're not asking to do much because like why will they should be asking to do more because that team needs more. They need
Yeah,
more on offense. When you score 17 points or whatever against Florida, that's just not close to enough.
not cutting it. Number 4, Jalen Carter. He's the second best player, arguably, in this draft class. Honestly, I think much closer to Will Anderson than people give him credit. He was the best defensive lineman on that Georgia defense. Don't need to talk much about him. The big upside and the reason you'll see him as a top 5, top 10 pick is he's an elite pass rusher, kind of what Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt kind of lacked. Big thing, Tony Grimes. This is the first time I've seen him, I think, in a first-round mock draft, certainly in the top 5. I don't have him over Kelee Ringo. I don't have him over Eli Ricks. I like his game. I haven't seen a ton of him, but that secondary at UNC is going to be elite. Tony Grimes, Storm Duck, they got some real ballers at the back end of that secondary. This just seems a little rich for me.
I mean, in fairness, though, Tony Grimes came into UNC as like essentially a high school senior and
It made
didn't
some
look out of
noise.
place one bit. He looked really good. So
Yeah.
I mean, Tony Grimes is like a guy who it's to me. Don't think you've seen Eli Ricks or Kelee Ringo dominate like a Derek Stingley to this point. So
Yes.
I think that quarterback spot's more up for grabs this year than
Then you
let's
think.
say the defensive end and D tackle market or the quarterback markets because those two I think are very locked. I don't think you can make a definitive argument against Tony Grimes as cornerback one yet.
Yes, I actually I wouldn't push back too much, and you make a really good point. He, as a what should have been a senior in high school, was starting as a true freshman at UNC and looked awesome. Pick number 6, Peter Skoronski, finally giving Justin Fields some help. I would have preferred a wide receiver for the Bears here, but Peter Skoronski, we both got film on him this weekend. He looks to be the best tackle in this class. Haven't watched a ton of the tackles yet, but he's really, really good. And Northwestern has a history of producing very, very good tackles.
Yeah, I mean, this tackle class is going to be interesting because there's not a ton of proven. Last year, like you kind of had the three guys you knew were really good players at tackle, and I think there's a lot to prove for everyone in the
Yep.
tackle class. Maybe Peter Skoronski's probably the guy who's done it most consistently at
He
the
has the best
highest
film,
level.
yeah. The rest of the guys are just projections. Paris Johnson, DeWanda Jones. Those guys like need to actually play good in order to be top 10 picks. Now we got
Yeah.
Bryce Young. We already talked about him. If he falls outside of the top 5, I'd be floored. Very low on Bryce Young.
Top three.
Yeah, that's a little wild. And we got Trenton Simpson, which is very early for an off-ball
That's your
back.
guy.
But he is
That's
my
your
guy.
though.
I didn't think I'd find anybody higher on Trenton Simpson than I am, and I just found him in Josh Edwards of CBS Sports. I think the Falcons have a lot more needs than a linebacker, as good as Trenton Simpson is. Talk about the prospect a little bit, I will. Undersized linebacker, but he's a very good tackler. And he's like that modern linebacker that can go sideline to sideline. He can lock up tight ends up the seam. He checks a lot of those boxes that you look for in those modern day backers. Like Trenton Simpson a lot. I just don't know if he'll be a top 10 pick with how good this class is going to be. Then pick 9, Dill. I know you've done a little work on Tyler Van Dyke. Is he QB3 for you? Over Will Levis?
Well, yeah, he's over Will Levis, but I think there might be other guys overall, both of them, in Jaron Hall especially. That's my guy.
Love him. He's your guy.
But I think this is awfully high. I don't know about these quarterbacks yet. I don't know. It's like you said it best. You put half a season together of good football, not like elite football, though. So another massive wild projection out of the quarterback class. Because again, there's two guys who are first rounders now, and the others I think you're unsure and they're going to need to play their way into the
My
first round.
my worry about Tyler Van Dyke, not to get too much into the college football landscape, is that there is just nobody for him to throw to on that offense side of the ball. I mean, they brought in Frank Latson from Clemson, but there's just no play. So if he does put up really good numbers at Miami, that'll really help the stock. He does have great arm, very talented, and what you saw in the very small sample size of 6 games, you have to like a lot. But yeah, it seems a little bit of a projection, but that's what you're doing in 2023 NFL mock drafts. We're mocking.
That's fair. I mean, maybe you do think he's going to grow into that premier player, but
that's 4 quarterbacks in the top 10, which we could certainly see. It's a very talented group coming off a group that was not so talented. So you might see a little push on the quarterbacks. At number 10, we got Kelee Ringo, a guy that really had his coming out party kind of in the back half of that year for Georgia. I love him. He's one of the highest cornerback recruits we've seen, according to 24/7 Sports. I think he checks a lot of the boxes. 6'2", 210 pounds. You worry about his long speed a lot, which I don't necessarily blame you. And I think you want to see him in a spot where he's having to be sticky for longer. I mean, in that Georgia defense, you don't have to be sticky that long. This year, they don't have as good of a pass rush. He'll kind of have to step up a little bit. And I think he certainly will be up to the task.
Yeah, and you're just gonna want to see him shut the big dog premier app like the Kayshon Bouttes of the world.
Yes.
You want to see him be able to lock him up because the only times you ever saw anything wrong was probably Tennessee and Alabama, where the 2 elite speed guys kind of were living. So that's I think naturally what you want to see, and if he puts that together though, at his size,
top 10 pick.
Yeah, he's up there.
Anton Harrison from Oklahoma. He's a guy that I haven't watched too much of. I've seen a lot of buzz for him. I'll need to get in there a little bit with Anton Harrison. I'm happy not to see him over Peter Skoronski just because I do think Peter Skoronski is an absolute awesome tackle. But Oklahoma looks to return a couple of good tackles. So I'm excited to see what Anton Harrison brings in the 2022 season. Antonio Johnson, watched the film today. Love him. He plays from the – my only thing is he going to go top 15 as kind of a nickel corner? Nickel corners are starting to get valued more as receivers in the slot are starting to feast, and you're starting to see the best wide receivers on teams kind of line up all over the field. Antonio Johnson, though, from Texas A&M, he reminds me a lot of Dax Hill. Dill, when you watch him, you'll see a lot. They like to blitz him off the edge. He can play like that kind of single high safety, but he also can be up in the box. He's a great tackler, and he's a very good athlete for that nickel spot. He's also 6'3", which is kind of a weird.
That is a weird height for a nickel, especially. You see under 6 feet tall, but I don't know. If you got the versatility to do it and you can play everywhere, that's probably not a bad thing.
Him and Malachi Moore remind me of the same type of guy. Very, very athletic, and they're sticking him in the nickel, and they can really do some damage inside of the box. Pick number 13, Jaquelin Roy. He's a very good pass rusher. Him, Mason Smith, BJ Ojulari, Ali Gay. That's going to be very, very good for all our college football fans. That's going to be one of the best defensive lines we see. Jaquelin Roy is going to have a real chance to feast, and he's going to need to show that he can be an elite pass rusher one-on-one against those interior offensive linemen. Then I picked.
I think LSU's got a lot of guys who are looking to prove some things because I don't think the production was there for anyone last year.
The talent
team was really bad.
Yes.
I mean, you saw the moments of. I think Ali Gay and Ojulari really stood out maybe more than Jaquelin Roy for at least last year, but you need some steady progress because that team just generally across the board wasn't playing at a consistently high level at really anywhere besides Kayshon maybe.
Yeah. And then Eli Ricks, that's my question. He barely played with LSU, and you really didn't see him in good form. He needs to have a standout year at Alabama, which I certainly, if anybody can get the best out of talented cornerbacks, it will be Nick Saban. And if he does have a good year, I don't see guys like Antonio Johnson going over it. And when you have a chance to get a long stud boundary cornerback, you got to go with Eli Ricks over a guy like Antonio Johnson. But again,
and people think he's great because he was probably the hottest transfer right up there with
top 3 transfers.
Caleb Williams and some of the other guys. He was right up there. So that college coaches think he's incredibly talented. So if he can just put it together and play some high level football for a sustained period, he's no doubt going to be probably could go higher than what Josh Edwards has him.
Pick 15, Kayshon Boutte. First wide receiver off the board, I believe. It's definitely not as a top-end talented group as I think we saw in 2022. But Kayshon Boutte is an absolute monster after the catch. And he was in an offense producing some insane numbers before he got hurt. That was just not that good. I mean, we see like guys from Ohio State and Alabama put up crazy numbers, but they're in a crazy talented and crazy explosive offense. LSU is not like that, and Kayshon Boutte was like the only guy that led to those explosive plays. Big time AJ Brown comp. Works the middle of the field really well, bounces off tackles extremely well, and just a monster after the catch. I'm okay with him being wide receiver 1, absolutely. Still, I'm going to invite you to have a little conversation. Kayshon Boutte, Jaxon Smith-Njigba are 2 top wide receivers. How are you differentiating these 2?
Right now, I have Kayshon because he at a place where he was the offensive weapon or the number 1 offensive weapon by a great margin.
Mm-hmm.
He dominated games. And what you said, just in a horribly unproductive offense besides him. So, Jaxon Smith-Njigba is obviously great, and you got to see when he was the number 1 guy, he ripped it up against Utah, who's got Clark Phillips at corner, and
they were playing just decimated secondary that game. They had a running back who played running back all year and then was covering Jaxon Smith-Njigba, so it wasn't really fair there. But I do agree. It is close, and you want to see Jaxon Smith. I want to see him prove that he can be a boundary receiver. He worked primarily in the slot. I don't think his wheels are that good. For a guy that's 6 feet tall, under 200 pounds.
Oh, he might have the Olave look, though, where he doesn't look like he's moving, but is just running. Because he did make some big plays where you saw him, like.
Might be more of a glider than he does.
Against, the play that sticks out to me is the Nebraska play where ideally he caught a short pass and just outran everyone. Where, again, Olave never looked like he was moving, but then you saw him fly at the combine, and you always saw him making big plays. So I think he should have the talent to do it. You're right. He probably does need to prove it more, being the alpha dog boundary guy, though.
Pick 17, pick 18. The Tennessee Titans take Henry To'oTo'o. And then the Miami Dolphins at pick 18 take Noah Sewell. I actually like the positions for both teams. Let's talk about the prospects. Henry To'oTo'o, in my mind, a little less physically dominant than Noah Sewell is. Noah Sewell is like 250 pounds. He flies around the football field, and this is going to be his 3rd year of college football. Henry To'oTo'o.
Yeah, I'm a Noah Sewell guy.
And I'm a little bit more of a Henry To'oTo'o guy because I value like the instincts a little bit more. He can go. He's not a bad athlete by any means. I don't think he's the athlete that Noah Sewell is. But he had to come into Alabama in the middle of the summer. We talked about this on last week's episode. Learn the playbook, and then he was responsible for calling the plays, being the captain of the defense, getting everybody lined up. That's not a very beneficial situation to fly around the field and be a physical monster. And so I think his 2nd year in Alabama, this is why he came back, because he knows he can be a first-round pick. He would have been a day 2 pick last year. He knows he can be a first-round pick this year. And I think once he gets that scheme, once he gets a little bit more comfortable in that Alabama defense, I do think he'll flash like we saw him in Tennessee, because he was an absolute monster at Tennessee.
Problem is, Noah Sewell did the same thing ostensibly, just he did it as a freshman. He came into Oregon and was immediately the leader of that defense. And I think what you saw with Noah Sewell is he got significantly better athletically in his freshman to sophomore season, where he looked like he lost some weight. Body looked more what you'd expect to see out of a premier middle linebacker, and played at an extraordinarily high level. So I don't know that the comparison of he's not the field general is totally, and I don't know if people are even going to make it, but I think he did show the leadership that you need. He did come into that Oregon team and take it over pretty quickly. And he's got the upside to be an all-pro, where Henry To'oTo'o I don't think is really in that ballpark.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Henry To'oTo'o tests, because I don't think he's a bad athlete.
He did look better. He did look better at Tennessee, that's for sure.
His Tennessee film is nuts good. It's so good. So that's kind of fresh in my mind when I'm trying to think about how I value Henry To'oTo'o. Pick 19, I'll take this one away. Myles Murphy's my absolute guy. I think he's gonna be a top 10 pick. Maybe right now, he's a top 5 player on my board. We had him going 4 to the Jets. This dude is absolutely explosive off the edge. For a guy who's 275 pounds, this will be his third year of college football. He's been dominating since he's been a true freshman, him and Brian Brazee. Now, Myles Murphy stayed healthy last year and continued to be an absolute dog off the edge. He can stand up. He can he can go into three-point stance. He can kind of do it all. He can play outside linebacker if you want him to. He's athletic enough to. And he can go right through tackles. I mean, this guy checks all the boxes for me. I think he'll be a top 10 pick. And I think people are going to see that with this dominant Clemson defense. This Clemson defense this year will be the Georgia defense of last year. So high in this Clemson defense.
Do you think he can be the first Clemson defensive end to really excel in the pros? Because if you think about it, going back, Clemson's had guys at the end who play really well in college, and then your Shaq Lawsons, your Clelin Ferrells. Clelin Ferrell really didn't work out. Shaq Lawson's an okay player, but not probably the guy you expected. So you do have to break out the mold of the Clemson DN where you got to put it.
I don't buy into.
I don't think it should matter.
I don't buy too much into that. I do agree, and I think part of that was Brent Venables schemed up a lot. So then when these guys were asked to win on their own at the NFL level, they might struggle to. But Myles Murphy, check the film last year. He wins on his own. He doesn't need any scheme.
Better athlete, I think. Yeah, he's a better athlete.
Top 10 high school recruit. We got Paris Johnson.
Don't care about that, but whatever.
We got Paris Johnson at pick 20 going to the Colts. Projection pick. I mean, if you wanted to build a tackle in the lab, 6'6", 315 pounds, really good movement skills, you'd do that. You'd make Paris Johnson.
Awesome.
He looks awesome. And then you see him against Aiden Hutchinson just getting dog walked.
Well, the problem was he was playing right guard. So he's
he'll slip
a guy who was playing probably out of his position and maybe at times you just got to prove it as the tackle. You saw a little bit in the spring game, didn't look great, but fine.
I think Ohio State really fumbled the bag with that offensive line last year. They were really talented, and it just seemed like multiple guys are playing out of position. You could also say the same thing about Taylor.
Shuffling them mid-game and all sorts of weird things.
It was ugly. Pick 21, Michael Mayer, the best tight end in the country. He could certainly be a top 15 pick, and I would love him to go to the Bengals. I don't think the Bengals will be picking this high. Don't get into much team fits this early, but Joey Burrow loves the tight ends. If you want an absolute electric tight end that can inline block, that can run routes and create separation like the best of them, Michael Myers, your guy. He just got to clean up the drops, which I'm sure he will. I mean, he still was the most productive tight end. I think he had just as many receiving yards as Brock Bowers, like 800 and change. I mean, he was
I give him
really
a
good.
Slight pass for last year because he was so hampered by injuries and just kind of got it out for. And he was so important for that team where if he wasn't playing, they're not nearly as successful. Because he was really their best offensive weapon by good margin for the most part. So I'll give him a little pass because obviously as a freshman, he's just so big, so athletic, so strong. It's just like you looked at him, that's a top 10 tight end.
He's in the thumbnail for this video. Just look at him. Yeah, they don't call him Baby Gronk for nothing. He's an absolute physical specimen. Josh Downs coming in at wide receiver 3 over a guy like Jordan Addison. Josh Downs was one of the most productive wide receivers last year in the country. Do I worry about the quarterback situation at UNC? Yes. He's a little undersized, and I think that's what they're looking to do, kind of replace Marquise Brown with a guy like Josh Downs who creates separation like the best of them, creates yards after catch like the best of them. You want to get this kid in space. I don't have him quite as high, but I do.
Probably want to see more pure wideout play.
Yes.
Catching the ball more consistently and maybe catching the ball deep a little more often because a lot of his production was just quick passes, get it to him and let him work. And that's what he should be doing. He's an electric athlete, probably the best pure runner with the ball or right up there with the other two. So,
I agree. I don't know.
But you want to see him develop, I think.
Absolutely. Blake Freeland, the tackle from BYU. Haven't seen too much of him, but I do kind of like the idea of Tyrone Smith's getting a little old, getting a tackle that you really like here. This tackle class in general doesn't seem to be as good as it was in 2022. And so we're going to see which tackles kind of emerge out of this group. But Blake Freeland's definitely one of the guys that's high on people's boards. And then we got
we usually get out of BYU a more technically sound, older player.
Yep.
And we'll see. It's not like you've seen a ton of high picks from the offensive lines of BYU, but
they're always good. They always have a good line. Pick 24, the Houston Texans go get Felix Anudike. He definitely has a hyphen name. They left that one out. We just watched him this year, or this weekend, previewing the Kansas State team. He's very good. He was like the only productive pass rusher on Kansas State. He can kind of do it all. He can go right through tackles. He's very, very explosive, but he also has really, really good bend around the edge. I think I have some other edge guys that I like a little bit more than him early, but this guy was really, really impressive.
I detest what Kansas State does to him, and it's a shame that they don't let him play on the edge more. And they play their 3-man front. Because it's hard to evaluate, like him. Will McDonald falls in a very similar category.
Yes.
Where it's like, yeah, you see the flashes, but you don't get to see it enough because he's getting a lot of double teams and just not working probably where he should be, which is on the edge.
He's right. He's starting his pass rush from like inside the tackle sometimes. Like, how is that guy supposed to cook? Exactly. Because he's so bendy around the edge. And like, let him cook there, but they don't. Eric Gilbert at pick 25, massive projection. This dude's caught like 15 balls in his collegiate career. One of the best tight end prospects over Michael Mayer in his class. Physically, he's a physical freak, and we just got to see him at Georgia. My worry with him at Georgia is that tight end room is so deep. So, like, how is he going to prove that he's a top 25 pick with that Georgia team? But again, if he plays up to like what he was billed as a recruit, I could certainly see him coming in the first round.
Then at wideout, though, so there's probably going to be some chances to catch some balls.
He's going to play like a hybrid. Yeah, he's going to play like a hybrid wideout. I mean, Darnell Washington is kind of their blocking tight end. Brock Bowers is like their true elite tight end. And then Eric Gilbert's probably going to be playing a lot of like jumbo slot. I don't see him lining up in line a lot, but he's going to be – I'm very, very intrigued how they do this with the Georgia – all those weapons at Georgia, all at tight end. And so we're going to see how they scheme that up. Brian Brazee falling to pick 26. Don't agree with this at all. Understand the injury problems, but you mean like he should be going higher, right?
Well, he's too low, I guess, low on the draft. Too high a number is what I kind of meant.
Yes, I agree. Brian Brazee is a guy that, and we say this all the time, you don't see him and Jalen Carter are guys like this. You don't see many guys who are 18 years old coming off their last year of high school football dominate grown men on the defensive line like a Brian Brazee, like a Jalen Carter. I mean, he is ragdoll.
This guy just might be the most physically strong player I've ever seen in college football. It's nuts how much of like just a handful he looks like.
And he's
guys
so
just
good
don't look like they can do anything with him.
And he can move. Like Jordan Davis, if you're trying to move a grown man, Jordan Davis might be the hardest guy to move. Like Brian Brazee's lateral quickness is absolutely nuts. I get the ACL injury is a concern, but a physical freak like Brian Brazee, I have no doubt that this dude is going to be a top 10 pick, top 15 pick as we are talking about the college football or the NFL draft in 10 months. We got Bijan Robinson to the Dolphins. Love this. I've been mocking Bijan Robinson to the Dolphins. You guys know here at ROC Boys Football, we're not huge pay running backs. We're not huge take running backs in the first round. Unless they're a guy like Bijan Robinson who checks every single box you ask for a running back and who can really fundamentally change how your offense runs. This dude was starting to run routes out of the slot. That's how good and comfortable he is catching balls out of the backfield. In terms of pure, I'm getting on my soapbox here. In terms of pure running skills, I mean, he's very, very strong. He has the elite breakaway speed. Very good at making secondary defenders miss tackles. I'm just trying to think about all the film and all the highlights I've seen this dude have. Checks all the boxes. He's the best running back in the class by far. He's certainly worth a first-round pick.
Yeah, no, he's a tank, and obviously the other two great running backs I feel like are sophomores, is my opinion.
Yeah, and Travion Henderson. All right, pick 28. Here's another one of my guys. It's going to be a lot of me talking for the next two picks. Quentin Johnston, a guy that I've done a lot of work on. He's very close to being the number one wide receiver on my board. A guy who's 6'4", 200 pounds. I think that's a little boost. I think he's closer to like 190 pounds. He's very wiry, but straight line speed.
That's good.
The box. But the biggest thing, yeah, the biggest thing is he plays big. Like he'll go up above the rim and go. And for one, it's a perfect fit for the Lions. He screwed us with Will Levis, but Quentin Johnston's a perfect fit for the Detroit Lions in the sense of a true boundary receiver. I talked about the long speed. I talked about the frame being able to go play above the rim. But what's special about this guy at 6'4" is his movement skills and getting in and out of his breaks and creating separation is off the charts. He's great after the catch. Again, another one who checks a lot of these boxes off. I just worry that he's not going to be able to cook in this TCU offense. But with Sonny Dykes coming in, I think when we
Probably
talk
help a
Quentin
little
Johnson
bit.
as a top 15 pick, it come in 10 months. Pick 29, the Packers are taking Jordan Battle. Dill, you've seen a decent amount of Jordan Battle. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, Jordan Battle's just I don't think he's like a top 15 safety like Kyle Hamilton
Yeah.
good, but he's a first round safety for sure. I think if he
Yes.
comes out this year,
Probably
he's
was.
right on the edge. I
Yeah.
think safety was a strong class,
Yes.
so that maybe would have hurt where he ultimately ended up, but he's a first round player. I think he gets his hands on the football. He's pretty physical for a safety, so I think he checks most of what you want. And he's not like a freak out there, but really good player.
Yeah, he's no Kyle Hamilton. And one guy that I would be, if I'm Jordan Battle and I'm concerned that another safety is going to jump me, it is Brandon Joseph, who is more of that freaky Kyle Hamilton type guy. But Brandon Joseph put together a really tough year at Northwestern. Jordan Battle's a guy that I don't know how Nick Saban got Henry To'oTo'o and Jordan Battle come back, but he did. Jordan Battle probably goes in the first round last year. I think he'll go in the first round this year. I don't see many just solid safeties like Jordan Battle. He's going to come back. He's going to dominate for Alabama. He's going to be a first round pick. You got Cam Smith from South Carolina, a guy that I've watched a little bit, one of the better cornerbacks in the class. I need to watch a little bit more of him. I feel like his film was a little up and down. 10 passes defended last year. I think he had like 4 or 5 interceptions, so that's what you love to see. The ball skills out of Cam Smith. He's a guy that I think will be kind of towards the back end of that first round, but he's a really good football player. The last 2 picks of the draft, we got Jahmyr Gibbs. Dill, you've seen a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs. I do like the team fit. What do you see out of Jahmyr Gibbs for being that RB2?
Jahmyr Gibbs feels a little Dalvin Cookish to me. I think is maybe who I'd compare him to. So I think a versatile guy can catch it, carry the ball pretty well, and I think
Yes.
fits the kind of the mold of what the NFL is drafting right now, where you're not drafting pure one-dimensional runners particularly high. So I think that's what Jahmyr Gibbs gives you is versatility and the ability to make big plays.
I would give Jahmyr Gibbs the Alvin Kamara comp a little bit more. Very, very good out of the backfield, and he put up some really good numbers. I think averaging over 5 yards a carry against an absolutely brutal behind an absolutely brutal Georgia Tech offensive line. You put him in Alabama. I really think this guy's a dark horse to win the Heisman, but he's a guy that's so good in space and he's so electric. He's another one of those running backs that I'm completely okay taking in the first round because of all the skill sets that he brings to the table. He will be a back end of the first round. One of those teams that is a really, really good team that's just looking for some extra juice. That's where you expend your pick on Jahmyr Gibbs. Guys like Tank Bigsby, he's more of a guy that's probably a day 2 pick where he doesn't necessarily have a NFL or an offense scheme changing skill set where it's like you can really build your offense around a running back like Tank Bigsby. I think he's more just a solid ball carrier. And then our last pick, Cortland Ford. Haven't seen much of this guy, to be quite honest. I don't mind the offensive line pick for the Buffalo Bills. There's a lot of good prospects that we left off. A guy like Jordan Addison not going in the first round. I feel like there's a couple of guys that I would have liked more than a guy like Cortland Ford. But again, it's so early. These guys have even Andrew Voorhees, a guy from USC, he was the guy that's popping on the offensive line tape for USC. But
I mean, at the end of the day, there's the tackle. There's just it's got to sort itself out. I mean, Zion Nelson could be a high pick if he plays really well. There's like the kid from Baylor, Connor Galvin, could be a really high pick if he plays well. So there's all sorts of guys who can just play. And I think the spots are up for grab again, like we kind of talked about earlier. There's just nobody. There's not like a clear preseason All-American who
Skoronski, I would say one, and then outside of that, I think it's a little. It's a good way to describe it. It's up for grabs. Zion Nelson's certainly a guy that needs to be taken a look at. That'll do it for our mock draft Monday 2023 NFL mock draft. Taking a look at Josh Edwards again of CBS Sports. Appreciate you guys checking out the video. And if you guys do like the content, again, we encourage you to subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. So if you guys do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to you guys later.